What's going on, everybody? And this is a new one to the channel today. I've been watching a few fantasy football channels, and I've been doing fantasy football for a few years now in terms of off camera and just doing it online and via the websites and stuff. I'm a big fan of the Fantasy Premier League stuff, so I've been watching some fantasy football creators, and as I said, I've been wanting to get into the field myself, so today is the first of many, and hopefully I'll be part of the community and you guys are liking the videos and welcome me with open arms. It's always something I've been a fan of, as I said, and it's something I'd like to get involved with. I enjoy doing it a lot, and hopefully I can add a bit of value to the community as well. Everyone's got their different favourites, but I just want to be a part of the Fantasy Premier League community and family, and hopefully it can help people along the way as well, like newer people into the fantasy football. So yeah, very excited to get going. Obviously there's an international break at the moment. England play their first game tonight against Malta, and then they've got their second game early next week, and then we've got Fantasy Premier League returning for Saturday's games of the Premier League getting back underway. So I struggle when there isn't a national breaks, because I always am just looking at my team and wanting to do things and do the transfers, and you know, when you get that urge to do your transfers early, but like you don't want to in case they get injuries, and I'm one of them. So yeah, hopefully the internationals will hurry up so we can get back to Fantasy Premier League football. But as I said, I've got a few notes here today just to get started on a bit of content. Be patient with me, I'm very new to the community. As I said, my style of videos might be different to other fantasy creators, and that's fine. I've got a lot to learn in terms of kind of editing and stuff, so hopefully you guys will like what I do anyway, and I hope to improve it over the years and learn about editing and stuff. I don't have a laptop or a computer, so I do everything off my phone. So unless I get sort of up-to-date equipment and things like that, it's going to be probably a bit more basic than some of the other fantasy guys. But as I said, I just do it for the content and love of football. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I've got a few notes here. My first one being that wary of Spurs players, as they've got quite a few injuries at the moment. Obviously, Van de Ven is going to be out for looks like a considerable amount of time. Romero obviously banned, Doggy banned. So they will return soon, but at least for this game week 13 coming up after the international break, I think that if you have Spurs players in your team, even the likes of a Son, yes, he could score still, but I feel like they're going to struggle to win games whilst most of their defence is out. So for me, I think Spurs are one to avoid at the moment if you have players, especially in the midfield or the defence. You might get away with it a little bit more with the attacking free in terms of like a Son. They've had a fantastic season so far, Tottenham, but with the injuries now and the bans, I would kind of pull back a little bit on Spurs players and bench them if you have them, unless you want to take that risk with the attackers, like I said, because I do think that they're going to potentially lose more games and draw until they get the bulk of their defence back. So that'd be my first, is just be wary of any Spurs players you have for at least the next game week, potentially game week 14 as well. Secondly, Cole Palmer at Chelsea is doing fantastic things at the moment. I believe he's listed at 5.2 on the website at the moment, his current value, or 5.1. So I think in terms of value for money at the moment, he's one of the best in the whole Fantasy Premier League. I haven't got him myself yet, but I plan to get him in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I think he is value for money, and in the next probably few weeks he's going to go up anyway, and next season he's probably going to be at around 7.5 to 8 million. So I would get him sooner rather than later. He's on obviously he's on penalties at the moment, hasn't missed one yet, so I think he's great value for money, and he'd be one that I'd be shortlisting to get in if you haven't already got him in. My last point is something that I know a lot of people do, but some people get a bit scared to do it, but it can make a huge difference if you get it on the nail. That is picking differentials that a lot of people won't pick, but getting a reward on the backside of it. So players that aren't as obvious maybe as some, that aren't selected hugely on the Fantasy Premier League website, but you know that they're consistent performers, and they might not get a ton of points every week, but they'll get you a steady amount of points. And I think that's something that since I've been watching other creators, I don't think every creator has the trust a lot of the time to go big on a differential, which I understand because I would do the same as well, but I feel like I'm a little bit more flexible in that sense. And I plan to do one for game week 13, a big differential that I don't see a lot of people selecting. I'm going to do another video probably Thursday or Friday before the Saturday games, just as a confirmation of who I brought in and just a last minute note kind of thing. Maybe I'll reveal who my differential is in that, but it's someone that I don't think is selected enough and kind of goes under the radar a bit. They've moved his position to a more advanced one, and I feel like in clutch moments he comes up big a lot of the time. And the team that he plays for have been turning it around in the last month or so. So I will probably reveal that in the week just before the weekend games come back. I'm going to put my team on the screen as well for you guys to see my current team. So here it is. So as you can see, I've gone with a 3-4-3 at the moment, my formation. I've got Neto in goal because obviously they've got away to Sheffield United this game week 13, but I feel like Neto is pretty good value for money despite being in a team that struggles in Bournemouth. He does come up big quite a lot of the time. I think he's consistent, he's pretty cheap. And away to Sheffield United, I feel like Bournemouth will win that game or have a good chance of winning the game. So even if he doesn't get a clean sheet, I feel like he will get me a few points at least, and I think that Bournemouth, I would assume, will win that game, but you never know. But I'm going with Neto in the sticks. Joachim Andersen, I have. If you want to save a bit of money, maybe go for Gueye, but I don't mind spending a little bit more and having Andersen. I've liked him for a couple seasons now. They're away to Luton. I feel like that Palace will win that game, but Luton have proven that they can make it difficult for teams at times. And being at home for that, maybe Luton will get something from the game, but I'm putting faith in Andersen that Palace will win that and get some points, even if they don't get a clean sheet. Trippier, obviously at home to Chelsea. A little bit tricky this week because I feel like that game against Bournemouth, obviously they just lost in the last game week. Don't think a lot of people saw that coming, and I didn't. It's tricky with him because they could perform like that, but he could still get an assist or a free kick and get you a few points. So he's not one that I'm looking to get rid of anytime soon. Newcastle do have injury worries at the moment, no, and he has been forced into left-back quite a bit. So that could potentially affect his points going forward until some of the players come back, because he's not on his natural side. But I would still say that he's worth his money. He might not get as many points at the moment because he's had to go to left back, but I still see him chipping in and being their main driving force at the moment with the injuries they have. So if you have him, I would keep him, but they've got a tricky few games ahead, but I still think that they could get some results, so I'm sticking with it. And then I've got Aguerd, West Ham, away to Burnley. Now, I think Burnley will get relegated. They're struggling a lot more than I thought they would. So I fancy West Ham for this, even though they're at Burnley. I feel like they've got enough quality to get the 3 points there. So sticking with Aguerd. But what I would say on a side note as well is that if you've got any African players, the AFCON is coming up in January. So I would be thinking ahead of time for that. If you've got a lot of AFCON players in your team at the moment, they're going to have to come out Christmas time or very early on in January, because you're just going to lose points for players that ain't going to get any minutes at all because they're going to be away on their international duties. So, yeah, I've currently got Mbeumo, Aguerd. I've only got 2 at the moment, so it's not as much of a headache, but I understand. I could see if other people have more. That's just a side note going ahead with the AFCON coming up, to have that in the back of your head to get them players out of your team before you're struggling and rushing last minute to think of replacements and like your budget. And into the midfield, I've got Foden. Obviously they play Liverpool, but City are at home for this one at the Etihad. Foden, I think, apart from the last game, he'd scored in the last 4 or 5 games in a row. He'd done well for me with the points in the last month or so. Probably done a little bit more than I was expecting when I brought him in, so that was a nice bonus. So I'd stick with Foden. Tricky against Liverpool, but they are the home team. In Mbeumo, I'm not looking to get rid of at the moment, but as I said, when that AFCON approaches, I will have to get him out. But I think he's good value for money. He's on penalties for Brentford, and they're at home against Arsenal, who haven't been great as of late. Arsenal, they're not exactly hammering tons of goals in. And I think it's going to be a tight game against Brentford, and I think Brentford are a very underrated team, and I think they can make it hard for Arsenal. Even if Arsenal win this game, I think Brentford will score. There's a high chance that they might get a penalty, which Mbeumo takes, but I think he could score from open play anyway. I think it's going to be a tight game, but I've got Mbeumo. I've also got another Brentford midfielder in Jensen. I think he's one that goes under the radar a bit. Kind of is the playmaker for that team. And yeah, he doesn't always chip in with tons of points, but he takes throw-ins. He's got a long throw on him. He takes corners. He takes free kicks. And when he does that and they win, he's involved a lot of the time, or more often than not. So I've got him in at the moment. He hasn't done fantastic for me since I've had him in, so I probably will look to get rid of him in the next month, because unless he starts sort of improving on the points. But he's not been doing great. But as I said, when they do well, he tends to be involved. So he's kind of one that I think you can get in for a reasonable price. And when they do well, he's usually involved. Last of my midfielders then in the formation, I've got Saka. Tough away to Brentford, but even though Arsenal are struggling, Saka is one of their more consistent performers and one of the most likely to score or get assists. So I'm sticking with Saka. He hasn't been fully on it in the last few months, but he's still one that I wouldn't be super confident about getting rid of. But it's away to Brentford, could be tricky. And then the three up front, I've got Darwin Núñez. Obviously tricky against City, but he could potentially do a madness like he did against Newcastle a few months back, which no one was expecting at the time. So he has their moments, but he's very rash and inconsistent. So it is a bit of a risk having Núñez in your team, because some weeks he could get you a ton of points, but then he could go missing for about 3 weeks. So it is a risk with him. I probably am going to look to get rid of him in the next couple of months, but I'm not in a rush to get rid of him, because I think he is going to play more games. And he will score more goals, I believe, because he gets a lot of chances created for him. He's just got to do a little bit better with finishing some of them, but I think that will come with him. Haaland, I think, is a no-brainer. I know he had a few weeks back where he was struggling and wasn't getting involved a lot, but the last couple of weeks, I think he's improved a lot again, up the points again. And being at home against Liverpool, massive game. I think he makes him even better in them games. He's hungrier, he's more aggressive, which ultimately results in more goals in them sort of situations. So I'm going with Haaland. Probably will be my captain. I haven't confirmed that yet, but at the moment he is my captain, Haaland. And then the last of the strikers for starting, I've gone with Ollie Watkins. Away to Tottenham, Watkins, another one that hasn't been brilliant as of late, but against Tottenham with their injury issues and players being banned, I could see Villa going there and either getting the 3 points or at least getting a point. I don't think Tottenham will win this game. I think the most they will get is a draw. And I think Watkins, I know he doesn't take penalties, but I think he could get a couple in open play. Potentially a hat-trick if Villa are on it like they have been in their form in recent, like they got one of the best forms in the league. And with Tottenham's injury issues, as I said, and players being banned at the moment, I think it's a great time for them to go to Tottenham and play them and get a good goal difference and a good result. I didn't know whether to captain him or vice him for this game week, and obviously I haven't confirmed that yet for the weekend's games. I will do that in the next video, but yeah, he hasn't been brilliant, but I can see him getting at least a goal in this game against Tottenham. So Watkins is my final pick. And then on the bench, I've got Flekken. Obviously, he's been in and out of the team in recent months with illnesses, little knocks. He's been in and out without Strakosha. I think when both are fully fit, Flekken is the first choice. Had him in a couple of weeks ago and he didn't even play. And lost points for it, obviously, but I didn't know at the time that he weren't going to be playing, and then he got an illness the week after or something, so it's a bit of a risk with him, but when he plays, I think he's good value for money at Brentford, and at home they're a tricky team to play against, more so than they are away. Against Arsenal, if he does start, it is a risk, but I could see them getting something from that game. It's just you're not certain on if he's going to play or Strakosha is, but as I said, I think if they're both fully fit, Flekken is the first choice. Cash, Matty Cash, I brought him in 2 or 3 weeks ago and he hasn't performed since I've brought him in. But I do think with Villa's form that they will bounce back with it, and I think him on a just individual basis will get better again. I think he had a little bit of an illness recently as well, so if he's back fully fit, I could see him being involved in some good moves for Villa against Tottenham. I've got him on the bench, but just because I prefer some of the other matchups for my defenders, and I didn't want to take any of the midfielders out to get cash in. But it depends on what you want to do. I've benched him, but I wouldn't be mad if you started him either, because I think it could be a good shout also. So, cash. Ward-Prowse got me a few points last week. Obviously got an assist. But I do think that some weeks he could get you like an assist and a goal. But then he might go a couple of weeks where he does nothing. And I have experienced that with him since I've brung him in. He hasn't been a complete failure, but last week was the best I've had from him in about 3 weeks I've had him in. So, as something to think of, I don't think he's always truly consistent, but he will take most of their free kicks and corners. They're in pretty good form, West Ham. Away to Burnley, again, I wouldn't be mad if you started him. He's going to have confidence after that last game. But as I said, I just prefer some of the other matchups for my team. So that's why I've got him on the bench. And then my last sub then, I've got Ben White, who is flagged at the moment with a muscle injury. He didn't start. He played 65 minutes against Sheffield United, 72 against Newcastle, and 0 didn't feature at all against Burnley, wasn't even in the squad. So it says it's a muscle injury, but it does say that he's got 75% chance of playing. So bit of a risk whether or not you risk him. I personally don't feel like he will be in the squad. I could be 100% wrong on that. I think if he is, he might be on the bench, because if he does have a niggle and an issue, I don't think Arteta is going to want to make it worse and risk it against the team. Against Brentford at home, it's going to be a lot of pressure on the back four for the Arsenal defence. And if he's not fully fit, I don't think Arteta is going to risk that and just throw him in at the deep end until he's completely confident that he's fully fit again and ready mentally and alert to go up against a team like Brentford in their own backyard. So I think if White is involved, he will probably come off the bench. But I could be completely wrong on that. I just think it's a little bit of a risk to put him in your team at the moment. And that is it, guys, for this week. Obviously, it's my first ever Fantasy Football Premier League video. I know it's going to be raw. It's going to be a lot different to the other fantasy footballers that you watch. But I hope you grow to like it and enjoy the content. As I said, I do it because I love football. I've had my channel for years, and I've been doing a lot of football content in the last year or so anyway. And it's, as I said, I've been doing fantasy football, just not as a YouTuber. I've been doing fantasy football just in my personal life for about 7 or 8 years, so, or maybe longer. But as I said, recently been getting really into it and watching other creators. Hopefully I can get to build a relationship with a lot of them. I'm subscribed to a few of the channels, and I just love the content and the information and the community that there is in the competitiveness. So hope you enjoy it, guys. See you soon.